Good morning, good evening, good day. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Our Findings Show. I'm your co-host, Harrison Bell.
My name is Mir Smolin.
Welcome back. So today we got a riveting episode for you. We're going to go through Mir and I's friendship. We're going to offer a little bit of advice after having completed 2 years at college. And let's jump right into it.
Okay.
Mir, talk to us about how we met.
Well, first of all, before we get into that.
Oh, sure. My bad.
At this point, we're in Portland, Oregon for the summer. So we got our little studio set up over here going on.
That's right.
Hopefully we're going to be sticking with that. And we got through the first kind of 2 years of college, and hopefully we'll have some kind of more guests coming on as we finished it up. But how did we meet? I mean, it's a great question. We met in middle school, but we were never really friends, right? At a certain point. But I think that's kind of what puts us in a position to be really good podcast hosts, is that we know a lot about each other. We've basically done every single thing on our resume we've done together so far, except for our summer internships this summer. Is that right?
That's about right. That's about right. And it's been very successful so far. Yeah. Very good.
Well, what are some things that we've done together?
Let's start from the top.
Okay.
My first memory together. I mean, my first memory was that Fortnite game in the 7th grade.
Wait, what was that? What was that?
Well,
exactly?
That was just you brought your setup, your PS4, and some controllers in to play some Fortnite on your MacBook.
Oh, really? Was that at school?
Streaming. It was at school. School, and I was getting very clowned on because I was no good at the game.
I can't imagine I was much better than you. But.
Well, you at least had some more experience. You had that nice pickaxe and everything. But that was my first memory. But the real first memory is the Taiwan 2019. Gosh, over 6 years ago now. Jeez. That was probably my most memorable trip I've ever been on.
Yeah. I mean, I basically didn't really want to go on that trip at first.
Right.
I just moved from New York to Portland at that time, and I wasn't really too sure kind of if I wanted to go on this 2-week adventure with these kids from my Chinese class. Right. But I think in the airport is when we kind of most bonded. Oh yeah. How did that even come about? Do you remember?
We took a flight down to San Fran, and I don't believe we weren't sitting together. I know for a fact we weren't. And down there in San Fran, we went to this bakery called the Boudin Bakery. We were with a few of our other buddies down there. We weren't particularly close with the other boys. At least we were friends with the girls, mainly me.
Yeah.
A few of the girls. And we sat outside at this Boudin Bakery eating clam chowder out of a bread bowl.
Yeah.
Delicious bakery. Yeah. And then I don't remember much else about that day. I remember we talked.
I remember we walked up and down the terminal.
Do you remember the escalators.
Yeah.
Or sorry, the people movers. Yeah. Yes, we did do that. Or probably ran up and down them a few times, goofing off, being 13, 14. I was 14. You were just about to turn 14.
Yeah.
And then we proceeded to have one of the best, 2 weeks I can remember having. We stayed with homestays. We tried amazing food. We went to Taiwanese night markets. We went to the top of Taipei 101. Yeah. We were immersed in an incredible culture with our classmates, with our teachers, and we bonded on a deep level.
Yeah, no, it was the best trip that I could have imagined too, because I got a lot closer to you and a lot of our friends from the Taiwan trip. And I mean, I was gonna name some names, but I think it would probably be better not to. I guess not now that we have a little bit.
But you're definitely glad that we went, aren't you?
100%.
Or that you went.
I'm super glad. And I think the thing is, I don't remember learning a lot of Chinese down there. I don't think we did that a whole lot, but I remember just hanging out like at Taipei 101. Do you remember that?
Oh, of course.
And just walking around. I for some reason remember having really deep conversations with you.
I believe so. I'm not sure what we had deep conversations about, because back then I was not particularly emotionally mature.
Right, and neither was I, of course. So I wasn't sure exactly what we were kind of talking about.
Yeah, but you were better than me, especially. I mean,
why were you not emotionally mature?
I don't know. I probably maybe attribute it to my childhood. There weren't conversations around that in my house growing up, which is not something I recommend. It's not good. It's important to learn about how to deal with your emotions and how to deal with other people. Yeah. And the power of communication early on. And I just wasn't exposed to it.
Well, I also can't say that I was particularly a
but
master at that.
Well, grade, at the time you weren't, but you've improved a lot. But at least you knew about it.
Yeah.
So then after that, we went into high school after that, and we were still tight.
Even before that, I think that Taiwan trip totally changed us, because then we started thinking of all the other things we could do together after that, right? We kind of immediately planned for Taiwan 2023.
That's right.
Which we talk about in our video. What's it called? It's called
Now or Never.
Now or Never. That's right. It's a skiing video. It's kind of our intro
trip of all time.
Yeah, most probably. Yeah. And essentially, yeah. And so we started planning a bunch of stuff together, and this is when we start coming up with a bunch of business ideas. I don't know if you remember this, boba cart.
Oh yes, I remember
Freshman
the boba
year,
cart.
boba cart. We said $1,000 all we need for a boba cart downtown Portland.
Yep.
Gonna sell, and we had a canned boba idea. That was a weird one.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I don't remember that one. I do remember the cart because we had researched and tried to shopped around for a bunch of different PPE
Carts.
plant property and equipment actually.
Yeah. Okay.
And I actually think that wouldn't have been the worst idea, but of course they fell through. It's the first example of something falling through.
For some reason, we've been leaning into food a lot in terms of our businesses. Food and beverage.
Food and beverage. Not the most profitable business.
No. But yeah, after that, we went into high school, and high school was obviously a very, we went through COVID, so it was obviously a very rough time. We
Definitely.
had ups and downs of communication between the two of us.
Definitely.
But kind of junior, senior year, I think basketball
brought us really back together for sure.
I mean, we were
already back by the time we both were trying out for varsity, because we were really back. Actually, really back at the end of sophomore year when we were playing JV.
Yeah, when
and
we got back
hooping on JV like crazy.
It's 11 points per game.
But it was different. I had never seen you play like that, and it was just kept coming. I realized, wow, actually, this guy is putting a lot of work. He's tough. He's tough.
I had nothing to do during COVID. I remember we were actually playing basketball outside.
Oh, that was the year before though.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Then this next year you started going crazy at Westside Christian and
that was a good game for me. I remember that.
Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And you were hitting these pull-up middies. It was ridiculous. And then
I don't know what came into me
you had 3 games like that, and you were good. The next year we played on varsity together. That did bring us together. We had a solid, and then we had a few great memories here and there, some trips to basketball games and whatnot, but nothing super defining in our friendship, as far as I understand.
Do you want to know something? We never chilled together. How a lot of
we're
friends,
never chillers. Yeah, we didn't just say, hey, buddy, you want to come over and just hang out?
Yeah, we never hang out. We always have to do something. Is what I found.
For sure.
It's either playing basketball or, we never just get.
And then eventually it turned into working on a business.
That's right.
So after we graduated, well, actually, prior to that, that junior year summer, Mir started working, junior in high school, that is, Mir started working at Killer Burger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And I had the genius idea of also getting a job about 6 months later, same place.
Well, what other place could you go work
What
for?
other place? Yeah. And they said, Mir, we'll take you.
Well, if you didn't know this before, but I had to build you up.
Okay,
if you don't remember, I brought you in. I said, "Here, Harrison, come in. I'll get you some free food."
That's right.
And then when you were doing that, I was telling, this guy, he's a good guy. All this other stuff. He's my best friend. All this, And then when you came in to get hired, everybody kind of already has seen your face before. I think, and also they needed people. So
they also needed people that helped too. He said, "So when can you start?" Was the first interview question.
Really?
Pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was pretty much a done deal.
Yeah.
They just said, "Is this guy okay guy? Not a terrible guy?"
Yeah,
all right, we'll take him.
Yeah, those are some good times over at Killer Burger on Northwest 23rd.
Northwest 23rd. After that, it went. I would still be okay with picking up a few shifts here and there.
That location was extremely dead.
It was extremely dead. I mean, we didn't do anything really, but the food was good. We had, we forged good connections with our coworkers, and it was fun. Honestly, it felt like work from time to time.
Especially
closing, but it's nothing crazy, and it was a great experience, and we had fun there and learned a lot.
Yeah.
So then moving on, we actually decided to save up a lot of the money that we made at Killer Burger. Yeah. We didn't make a whole lot in total, both of us.
No, we didn't.
It was
a bit of a grind over there.
It was, and it's a lesson. I mean, that's work right there. That's minimum wage work.
Right.
And we then decided to start up a e-commerce business.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was senior year. Even before that,
we're in senior year now.
We're in senior year of high school.
Oh, and end of senior year.
Did we start to try to want to do the business before our senior year internship at Nike, or was that after the business idea?
Well, Killer Burger was starting in February. And our internship at Nike was starting in April.
Yes, but specifically the
idea for e-commerce pretty much started around March, April as well.
Okay,
but we
got
kind of
it.
had it on the back burner,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
DL, on the
Yeah.
down low. And then we started really putting that killer burger money, because we weren't getting paid at Nike at this point. We started putting that killer burger money right into our fund for the e-commerce business.
Yeah. And actually getting a lot of valuable opinions from our brand director over at Nike, the Nike Golf brand director.
Yes, we were.
At the time.
Yes, we were.
You know, she was kind of guiding us through our ideas. Good. She took us out to lunch one time. Do you
Yep.
remember that?
Yep.
That was
Red
that was
Robin.
awesome. And also, you know, obviously we couldn't save up enough money on our own just to buy our initial inventory at from our killer burger money. So we had to go DoorDash.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
actually
right.
the DoorDash nights
So
were-
DoorDash, we were DoorDashing sometimes 5-6 hours a night, and splitting the money, putting it right into the fund for the e-commerce. So that was our first venture together. Killer Burger was first. DoorDash was second. Nike internship was third. E-commerce was fourth.
Yeah,
So
well-
by the time we graduated senior year, we'd had four accomplishments together under our belt.
Yeah, that's right. And even after the e-commerce business, which actually didn't end up really making us any money overall, not much at all, right? I mean, only
Lost money.
Very
Lost money.
Yeah, well, we lost overall, but in terms of revenue, I don't think we made very negligible amounts of money.
Very negligible.
But we did get a return offer to work at Nike again, and so we worked as traveling kind of marketing analysts,
brand representatives,
whatever you
we
want
were
to
on
call
the
it.
floor, salesmen, whatever, and kind of doing a lot of work for the brand director who we'd interned under.
But we ended up traveling a fair amount. Where did you end up going?
We did end up
Because
traveling. First,
I was in London.
First, yep. So when Mir went off to London in college, our first trip together was Pendleton. We went to Pendleton, Oregon, not too far away. We drove over there, did some work for Nike, grassroots event, coached some kids golf.
That was fun.
Good stuff. Then I went on to Atlanta, did a little PGA. Actually, it was a tour championship, which is kind of a penultimate PGA Tour event.
Wait a minute. Was that FedEx?
Yeah, FedEx Cup Finals.
Yes.
Victor Hovland won. That was 2023. And then we moved on to. I went to
Denver?
Dallas. I went to Dallas in November 2024. And this I didn't start college till January 24. I went to Dallas. Sorry, it was November 23. And then when I started college, I went down to Jacksonville, Florida, and I went to Denver as well.
Now, the Denver was actually an NBA event, if I remember correctly.
Denver was a basketball event. Yes.
Man, that sounded fun.
Yes, actually, it was something that was really cool. Is at the gym we showed up to do the event in, big gym in rural Denver. I walked in and all of a sudden, first thing I see is Jalen Brunson shooting hoops on the basket.
Really?
Whole New York.
Was he with Dallas at that point?
He was with
still?
New York Knicks.
Oh, he was already
Whole
with the
New
Knicks.
York Knicks team
Oh, wow.
in Denver on that court shooting
cool.
hoops, warming up for their game that night, which we went to against the Denver Nuggets.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It was cool.
So, after that, actually, even before that, I believe around November or so, we wanted to pivot from e-commerce to something else. And actually, it was Harrison's idea to pivot to a real estate, kind of wholesaling real estate. If you're not familiar with what wholesaling is, it's basically taking a property that somebody wants to sell and then connecting that seller with a cash buyer.
Yep.
And getting a little bit of commission in between.
It's effectively acting as a real estate agent for off-market deals.
That's a good way of putting
You
it.
can wholesale on market, but it's a little more complex and not always as profitable.
Yeah, definitely not as profitable. So we kind of dive head in first, and it was definitely pretty challenging, I would say, initially, because I was in London, you were in
Definitely. A lot of communication issues there.
at that time.
But honestly, that's when we experienced our most success.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Was when we were apart for some reason.
Under pressure, yeah.
And we were literally in, he was in London again. I was in New York. We were full-time students, and we closed 2 deals within 3 months of starting our business.
Yeah.
Closed 2 sizable deals and put a fair chunk of cash into our business account. And from there, it went completely downhill. Next summer.
Not completely downhill. We actually had a few very, very close deals. And that were,
of course,
very large in size.
Downhill in terms of execution and results, but uphill, I would say, in terms of strategy,
learning. Yeah. Sometimes, we definitely learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes during that business. I mean, so many mistakes, which I think, you're kind of leading the episode today. I mean, I think you have some questions that are kind of going to talk about those mistakes that we had. But for me, business is luck plus experience, right? And we had no experience, and luck was not always on our side. Sometimes it was, especially with those 2 deals that we did close initially in this first 3 months. But, you know, we started learning from our mistakes, and I genuinely think that some things just didn't totally work out for us. Like, for example, that Scappoose deal.
That's right.
Do you remember that Scappoose deal?
Of course I do, where you got chased by some dogs.
that was a crazy story, because a woman wanted to sell her home, but she hadn't been in it for a decently long time, and she was afraid that there were some hoarders in there at that point. Yeah. So we show up, and you know, we
wanted to scout out the place.
Yeah.
You know?
We already have the place under contract.
Everything's
so
signed.
It's all
Everything's
good.
signed.
It's all good, and it's at a great price. I mean, I remember talking. It was actually a joint venture deal with.
It was
one
a
of our
joint
partners.
venture. We stood to make a ridiculous sum of money.
I want to say it was around 40K.
It was around 40K.
50K.
It was around 50K.
And that was
one
splitting
deal.
the profit.
And that was with splitting the profit.
Yes,
yeah.
50-50.
Yeah.
So because it was a joint venture deal, I mean, that was a crazy deal. So we go out there to scout the property, take some pictures potentially for our investors. And when we get there, you know, that classic, a lot of cars.
Oh yeah. Oh, a bunch of cars.
A lot of cars on the lawn. A lot of...
now, mind you, this is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
up a road.
Scappoose is pretty deep.
But this
I
is
would say.
deep Scappoose.
Yeah.
This is not city streets of Scappoose. This is in the hills.
Dirt road.
Middle of freaking nowhere.
Yeah. So we show up, and the whole property is basically at the very end of the road, and it's very secluded. Not a whole lot of, you know... Not very valuable, I would say, real estate.
The greatest land ever.
You know, a lot of junk laying all around, and a lot of dogs barking.
Woof, 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 woof.
But they look like they're all bite, all bark, no bite. You know, type of dogs.
They're friendly little dogs.
Friendly little dogs, Chihuahuas.
A lot of Chihuahuas.
Yeah, so I'm like, since we're already here, we drove out around 40 minutes from Portland.
Yeah.
I might as well get out, take some pictures. And at this point, we liked showing up to these deals, some polos, potentially some polos, some dress pants, some
nice
dress shoes.
Just
because if we were to meet the people that were there, even if they're hoarders, it would just be good to have a good impression, right, on people and on owners and all sorts of things like that.
Absolutely.
And so when I get out of the car, I say, Harrison, you wait around here, but I'm going to come back real quick, take some pictures. And I didn't want to get too close because you never know with hoarders. They might be having a gun. They might not want people on their property. I don't know if it's their property, but the property that they're living on, right? So I try to be careful. I sneak around, and the dogs, at this point, I can't see them. They've gone away.
Right.
So I get a little closer and closer and closer to take pictures. And at this point, one dog sees me. Starts barking at me.
End.
And then I start walking back very slowly, but I still try to take the pictures. At that point, about 10 or 12 dogs come and rush me all at once. And at this point, they are trying to get close. They're trying to bite me. I could see this, that they're trying to bite me. And I hurry back, and I'm on this gravel road.
Oh, he takes off running down a steep gravel road in his dress shoes while I quickly turn the car around and floored it right after him, kind of scare the dogs off him, trying to yell at him, get him off him. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was running for a good quarter mile. Maybe I would say
it was a good distance.
I was sprinting. I mean, it was one of the scariest moments of my life. And eventually, I mean, that deal didn't end up working out.
I want to say something sketch happened with the homeowner as we were leaving. I forget what it was.
Oh, yes, that's right. And actually, as we were leaving, one of the cars that we thought was not working actually ended up following us. Yes, down the road.
That was scary.
Yeah, and we actually had to go pretty fast.
We punched it out.
Yeah, that was I forgot about that.
Yes.
Good memory on that one.
So that was... part of the lesson from all this is eventually wholesaling. It didn't fully work out for us. We probably could have made it work out, but we realized that to really have drive and approach something with your best, you really have to love what you were doing. And neither of us loved wholesaling.
I can't say that I did myself, but I think there's a few things that I definitely got out from this experience. Number one, starting something that you have absolutely no idea what you're doing can work sometimes if you really, love what you're doing, because you think about it outside of work.
Right.
You dream about it. You're on the toilet, you're thinking about it, right? Every single moment of your time goes to thinking about this obsession of yours. And that's one way that you can get better at something that you have no idea about. Otherwise, it's great to have a mentor. It's great to have somebody teaching you. This is why, we filmed an episode. I believe that it's actually no longer on platforms because we, kind of have changed our views a good amount on this issue. But, the internships are not always a bad thing. Actually, there it could be a great thing because you're learning from the process. You're inside. You're kind of almost like a spy, right? You're learning and taking a lot of things back with you that you can do to start your own business. Is that something that you're?
I would 100% agree. I mean, I think one of our overarching questions that Mir and I have constantly approached with each other is, what do we do when we don't graduate college with a tangible skill?
Yeah.
What do we do? How can we put ourselves in a unique position to be successful without a tangible skill?
Right.
Does it take a graduate degree? Does it take honing in on a certain fancy career that may seem attractive but really isn't attractive upon further, reflection? We're still trying to figure these out, but I think we have a few answers for you.
Right. Halfway through college, I think we got a few
I think we have a few things. For one, I want to ask you, Mir, a question. What you see in people, whether mindset is usually better than resume, and if that really affects you for the better.
So this is a great question, actually, that you bring this up, and my viewpoint has completely shifted from this.
Okay.
I used to think that mindset is so much more important than your resume, especially at our age.
Sure.
In some ways it is. In some ways, in more ways it's not, though, because a person that has done things is generally more valuable to a company than a person that has not done things. Even if that person is really ambitious, really hardworking, all these tangible things are important, but at the end of the day, you learn and you get better by doing. The work teaches you, right, how to do it. And we're actually going to have a person on the podcast come on, Mark Engelstad. That's one person that wants to reform education, and he thinks about education in a way that is not intangible skills like what you're talking about, right? But rather very tangible things like, what have you done in order to be successful? Because you have to do things in order to learn from them, right? You have to start that business in order to get some sort of experience out of it. So actually, I think doing like your resume is more important as long as what you're doing is actually making you learn from your experiences. Because a lot of kids, I'll tell you, they put stuff on their resume. It's not real. None of it is real. They didn't actually increase their, their team's performance by 25%. They didn't actually do that. But what you want to do is you want to get into these internship situations. You want to learn from them more than you want to impress, more than you want to have performance, right? All these things, because if you focus on performance at such a young level that we are at a junior level, you're actually not going to make it big, in my opinion. But what's your opinion on this?
I'm probably somewhere a little bit more in the middle than you are, probably because in general, I don't think, if we're thrown out there on the street, no education, no money for education, you're not going to college. You're not John. You're not going to college like John. He's not going, you're not going, I bet you we could figure it out with just our intuition and our guts.
Okay.
I don't know if it means going back to e-commerce, going back to whatever, just hitting the library and just getting into the weeds of finance.
It matters a lot.
Doing something like
Ambition,
that. Absolutely. But if you want to be a little bit realistic for a second, then I tend to agree with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, so one thing that actually, I don't want to go into his entire philosophy, but one thing that Mark talks a lot about is that, these people hang on to the idea that intangible skills are really more important than resume because it makes them feel better about themselves. It makes them feel like they can compete. And frankly,
when you say intangible, you mean tangible skills.
I mean intangible skills. Like ambition is not
I see. Yes,
tangible.
Intangible. Got it.
People try to cling on to these intangibles because they feel like they're more competitive out there in the competition pool than they really are. Right. This is a question that we had. We actually did have a lot of experiences under our belt: business, Nike, all sorts of other things. But we, previously, if you go back a few episodes, we were thinking more about ambition and hard work and all these other things. I mean, companies don't hire for that. Companies hire for a person that can actually do the work.
Of course. Now, when you think about long-term and what it really means to be successful, you do need to have those intangibles. You can get that first job without having them the same way, right? Maybe you want to impress your parents, right? You want to make them feel, you want to make yourself feel, or you yourself feel like you owe it to them to get that nice shiny job right out of college.
I've heard this, yes.
But you max out at some point.
So I hear you. I hear you.
The
on
intangibles lift you out of that first job.
So that's an interesting point you bring up, and I completely agree with you. Intangibles, especially ambition, and especially going out there and risking, kind of being a little bit less risk averse.
People skills, yes.
People skills, all of that matters a lot, but it's only an add-on to experience that you have, right?
Of course.
And a lot of things, like let's just say business. You need to, in order to be a successful asset manager, let's say you want to start an asset management company, because that's what you're doing right this summer, Harrison, is asset management. Let's say you want to start your own company. Well, you can't just start one right now with your 3 days of experience. You need years and a few years of
at
really
least a few
understanding.
years.
But there's a limit. You don't need 30 years.
No, you don't need 30
years. You don't need 40 years. You just need enough to where you understand the system.
Yes.
You are really proficient in the skills that you have acquired.
Yeah, in the basics at least.
You have to have the humility, and you also have to have the ambition to move on. So basically, the
risk
lift
profile
you up in the risk profile, right? To lift you up out of that position.
And there are incredibly smart people who never are able to do that, right? There are various reasons. Got a kid, for one, got a wife, right? You got to pay the bills. You're completely off your parents' payroll, right? I'm sure there are kids who work incredibly hard for that job at Goldman, right? Mm-hmm. And then they have no backup, right? So it's, quit that job.
Well, I'll tell you what else is. It's so much easier doing it as a second generation successful person.
Yes, correct. And much easier.
And let me explain exactly what I mean, especially to our viewers, because we've talked a lot about this, but not on the podcast exactly. Is specifically when you're the first person to make it out, we have a few people in mind, of course, right? If you've been living on a farm and you become a successful lawyer, let's just say, for example, you went from zero to making $1 million a year, and that is a great thing for you. You provided for your family. You did everything that's really important to you. Now that second generation comes along and they say, well, this is my baseline now, right? And like, let's say that was my father or my mother that made that accomplishment. Now I need to do something more. I need to do something better. Like I already have this as a baseline, right? And then I could kind of go from there. I think a lot of people, it's really still possible in America to go from zero. Like John, we talked about John, right? A guy from the Bronx that's not living a very, not a very
He's robbed 5-6 times a year. He's in trouble, bro.
Right. John, who lives in poverty up in New York, right? Yeah. He can lift himself up in America to be a billionaire. Yes, he can, 100%. Yes. But it's so much harder because you end up stopping. Like John ends up stopping at a managing director level because he feels completely satisfied with that. Yeah. So I think that's part of where the mindset can come from. And I think the way that I phrase this is going to make me get a lot of
but that's also fine. If you want that, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
I think the reality is, the people don't stop at the managing director level. They'll stop at the associate, VP level if we're still in this framework of finance or consulting, whatever, they stop at that. Actually, in fact, there is a stat. I believe they really stop at that $150K to $200,000 range.
And that's great.
It's a great salary for most people. And for most of Americans, it's an unbelievable salary, but it's really hard to get out of that.
Yeah, because
it takes the intangibles.
Because you live in such a comfort zone, right? You have everything you would ever want. You have unless you're living in New York, you have a home, you have a house,
a car, nice car.
These are all things that at the end of the day matter. Like all the other stuff doesn't really matter, but it's for yourself at that point. Because 150K gets your family fed just fine. But it's on top of that. Like, do you want to have ambition to actually change the world,
right?
Or change the industry, or change,
or do you want to, or do you want to step up in the tax bracket? You want that, you want the Lamborghini. You always dreamed about having a Lamborghini, right? Maybe that matters to you.
I mean,
usually it doesn't.
If that is your drive, that's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Trust me. No really successful person that's built up an empire for themselves has ever thought in this way.
They've never thought in that way. However, sometimes people will say, I always dreamed of it. Usually they'll be like, they're already successful.
If they're already successful,
totally
fine.
Yeah,
totally fine.
Say, I've always dreamed of this. Nah, why not?
There's great things that I would want too if I get rich, right?
Yeah. And so I retract my statement. That you're right about.
I hear you. But also, the more I kind of used to have this mindset that I gotta be a billionaire. Just gotta do it. But this didn't make me change my mind. But have you heard of the $75,000 or $77,000 a year theory? That after $77,000 a year, you don't get any happier.
I've heard that's after $10 million in net worth that you don't get happier. That's what Scott Galloway said.
Okay, sure. I've heard the 77,000 per year doesn't get you any more happy.
I see.
Because
that's probably true. I mean, realistically, you need, feed your family. I think that might be a little outdated too, because nowadays you can't take your family on vacation with $77,000 a year. I mean, really. I mean, you can.
If you're the only provider, probably not. Yes.
Yeah.
But I think there's some merit to that, because you get all your baseline things that matter the most covered. Can you send your kids to college? If you save up, really
but
well,
then you're not enjoying the fruits of your labor yourself.
Exactly. Right. But I think the basic things you still get. You still get to go out a few times, a few weekends a month, all this other stuff that ends up mattering.
You get a decent car, everything.
I think on top of that is kind of, there are some people that are just never going to be satisfied with that. They're just not going to be happy. I think I'm one of them, not because I'm not satisfied making $77K a year, but rather because I have an ambition to do something great.
Something right. Sure.
Really, it's selfish. It's a selfish thing. I think I'm a little bit egoistic in that sense, because I want to change the world, honestly.
Right.
That's I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but that's what I want to do.
It's fine. But to me, I have the same feeling, but I also have the feeling that I actually do know I know what makes me the happiest.
What's that?
Right? And it's spending time with loved ones and just enjoying life. Right?
Well, if that's what makes you the happiest. Whereas, why do you got to make $1 billion?
Don't have to necessarily.
Well,
don't have to.
Okay, let's just.
How much do I want to make?
You have to make?
I want to have. I really don't care. I love airplanes. I want a nice private plane. That's it. That's all I want.
Okay.
I don't need no boats. I don't need no nice car. Just on a nice private plane. Now, the problem is that it takes a lot of capital.
Yeah. And don't you think if your biggest thing is to make, spend money with loved ones, maybe actually getting a job that's more of a 9-to-5 where you can come back home every night to your kids.
There's an argument to that.
Is more important.
I think there's probably societal pressure around me, maybe at NYU, that says 9-to-5, or you just want to work a classic 9-to-5 in sales.
Well, not sales. Let's just say it's banking. Let's say it's something fancy even.
Sure. I mean, I guess those aren't usually the same.
But do you hear what I'm trying to say?
I do hear what you're saying.
Maybe taking a traditional job, a W-2 job, is better for spending time with your family. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure, maybe is. Probably is. Now, there's the argument that you can, hustle and then you can retire earlier and then spend the time.
That's a good.
There's also arguments, when people talk about wanting to contribute to society in a meaningful way. You might think that some real estate developer isn't really contributing to society in a super meaningful way if he's just loading his own pockets the whole time, buying and selling apartments that might not have, a ton of meaning in that lifestyle.
Okay.
But the idea there is that actually, you take the George Bush route, make a lot of money early, and then enter public service or give that money away, become a philanthropist. Oh
man, they're going to flame me for that one, because I don't know if George Bush is necessarily the most. Which Bush are we talking about exactly?
He's an example of. I believe it's George W. Bush that we're talking about. But he's an example of, actually, or maybe it's his father. I don't know. To be honest with you, I should know that. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is a third, a story I've heard from another party.
Okay.
But, he entered public service. A different example would be, what if Donald Trump decided to, instead of, becoming president, he took his $7-8 billion or whatever he had and gave $7-8 billion of it away, and spent all his time like Bill Gates on a foundation.
Well, to be honest with you, that's what I'm gonna be looking to do myself.
Of course, and that's some people's argument where, you can have a career that may not be saving lives, being a first responder or something like that, and that's okay. It's okay to make money, enjoy that, but then give it away.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the reason why I do want to make a ton of money still. Yeah. Still be a billionaire if I can.
Sure.
I mean, it's not the biggest priority of mine, but I think I can make a bigger change doing that than being, volunteering is something that is really important, but I think it brings more self fulfillment than kind of societal fulfillment if we look at it on the aggregate, right? I mean, if I'm a billionaire and I give away all my wealth, should hypothetically be providing more to society, just because our system is built on money and capitalism, and giving, the more money you can give away, the more impact hypothetically you can make, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm basing it off of.
So let's talk about how to get there, right? Okay. Let's talk about how to get there. What's and go back to this conversation about intangibles.
Okay.
what is a skill that I have that you notice in me that you think is something that will be helpful in life?
In what sense? In the business sense?
Yeah, business sense.
I would say there's a few things that I definitely really admire about you, and I think makes you a great business partner. Number one, loyalty. By far, one of the most loyal guys that I've ever come across. Will stick with you forever throughout anything, right? And I think that's really important. If you look at The Apprentice, the movie, I actually have not watched it myself, but I've heard a lot that loyalty is one of the most important things, especially as you're climbing up to that success ladder, right? You don't become successful right away, but you can cling on to somebody who is, learn from them, be loyal to them, right? I think that's something that you really encompass. Yes. And number two is you're out there in I think in a good way in terms of your risk profile. You're always coming up with new ideas that people just don't think about often, and you are kind of wanting to start them right away. Like you're not worried about losing a few, basically you're wiping out your whole bank account in order to start a milkshake business. You're not worried about that. You'll do it because you feel like, number one, it'll be a good experience. I think you're really ambitious in that way.
Okay. Yeah. I'll say for you, I think you do have, for one, to just get it out of the way, I think you do have the intangibles mastered better than me, better than most people I know. The drive, willing to show up to work, your thoughtfulness and everything too. You approach each task with a really critical lens. You don't want to do something just to do it. You want to do it the right way, and that's very important. Best example of that is, we're wholesaling. No typed notes, no printing, handwritten.
I am a big handwritten guy. I think that you can see the paper.
Sure, but the principle remains the same.
Right.
I think that, you have a sense of gravitas almost around you when we're meeting with business clients.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is sometimes I think it can hurt you if you think we're a little above our age, which has hurt us before, and actually was a big problem in our business, I think, when we showed up at a few places. But you were far better than me at really capturing the kind of the almost the credibility in the eyes of our person. I know what you mean in terms of kind of sticking to the plan, bebeing confident. Is that one of the things? And I'm more personable, but I collapse a little bit more under pressure. In a hot deal situation, you're able to make quick decisions. You're able to think on the spot. These are things that are extremely important in the business sense. So
that's the other thing that I wanted to come back to is, I think part of why our wholesale business didn't do as well as it could have gone is because we still don't have those exactly tangible skills, right? We have a few intangibles that can pair well with each other, right? But in terms of the tangibles, we just couldn't split up our work in a way that was necessarily the most productive always. I agree. Most efficient always. I agree. Right?
And honestly, the biggest problem, the biggest problem that we had with wholesaling was we didn't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
We spent money, a ton of money, and we tried to do every possible thing to get some quote unquote inbound marketing. And we didn't do the thing that everybody said to do. And that was just to pick up the phone and start cold calling people.
We did do a fair amount of that.
Of course we did a fair amount of it, but really, we would spend whole days trying to figure out other strategy. We should have just been cold calling 8 hours a day. Yeah. No, we would have gotten a deal. There's plenty of houses.
I'm with you on that. Now, what are some, because we're using this podcast at this point,
it's brutal. Let me just, to interrupt you, I'm sorry. It's absolutely brutal to cold call when you're not getting paid and you're just hoping and shooting in the dark and you just get no after no, hundreds of no's like we got. I did it and it got us 2 deals.
Yeah. No,
and then we went cold. Yeah. And then we went cold.
Yeah, exactly.
And we wonder why we didn't stay warm.
Right, exactly. Now, what I was going to say is that we use this podcast. We don't have that many viewers. We don't have that many listeners. Our audience is, maybe 20, 30 people at this point. This is our 8th episode, I believe.
Probably.
And I want to use this podcast as kind of something that we can come back to, right? Yeah. Here we are having a conversation about our strengths. Now I want to talk about, potentially some of our weaknesses because we can record them here on this podcast, work on them, right? Get back to them in that sense. And then maybe 10, 20, 30 episodes later, because we hope to be consistent in this, come back to this episode and say, well, how have you kept your strengths and improved your weaknesses, right?
Yep.
So I guess
should we let's give our own weaknesses first and then add on. Go ahead.
Fair enough. I think some of my weaknesses, definitely, I'm definitely gonna try to get better at this. I think that I try to manage too much.
Yes.
I have a certain vision in my head that is a very kind of like you said, a very detailed vision of how success can come about.
Right.
And especially when I'm really locked into that vision, I sometimes don't take, others' feedback as much. And I try to really focus in on that, which has come back to bite us a few times. It's definitely, on occasion caused a few disagreements within our business. I'm definitely trying to work on this because I've kind of realized like, man, I don't know anything at this point, right? I haven't done anything. I haven't worked for anybody. Like I don't know anything about business. And so that's definitely, the book Mastery has made me really a lot more, the humility, kind of raised my humility in terms of this topic. So that's one weakness that I have. Yeah.
I would say my biggest is probably reliability. Probably I struggle to take the first step. I can, once I did take that first step, it's not a problem really. Once we're in the office, we're going and we have some momentum. It's no problem, but it's really hard for me to take that first step for whatever reason.
Well,
that's unacceptable.
How's that reliability exactly?
Well, because for example, it might be my job to post a few clips on a day, and no clips. Didn't just takes a while actually to post the clips, but it's no problem when I actually do it.
Right.
But just opening the laptop is a hard thing sometimes for me.
I see what you mean.
And it's not a good trait in a business partner at all. But I'm working on that. I think we've struggled to gel together because of communication mainly.
Exactly.
Really, I think that's been biggest problem.
I think I could speak to myself. We've been very focused. I've been very focused, I should say, on kind of how maybe you perceive me, and not focused on the kind of work that I'm myself doing, right? As much.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we could definitely both get better on, definitely gel more together. I think it's going to take even more hard work than we're doing right now. It's going to take actually a lot more hard work. Of course. I mean, we're full-time students, so we can give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back right now, but as soon enough, it's not going to be acceptable anymore. And I think if we can start to work on these weaknesses right now,
I agree. I think it'll help them. It'll help in the future.
Oh, it'll definitely help in the future.
And we're not good at when we get into a disagreement. We're terrible at disagreements.
Neither party really not always wants to de-escalate, right?
That's right. And I will feel attacked sometimes, I think, and if I don't voice my opinion early, that's a problem. And then you also become dogmatic in some ways too, and will just say no just to say no because I disagree sometimes.
That's right.
And that's not good for a production.
Yeah, definitely some things that I've been trying to work on. Yeah. Definitely have a long way to go, I would say.
As do I. It's no overnight game, no free lunch.
Definitely.
But so before we end, I think we should get to a few more, or at least one more question that I have for you, which is, what's our edge? What is our edge going to be? Those strengths that we talked about those are helpful in the moment to know, but in the long run, what do you think our edge is?
I'll give you our edge. And I think this is something that a lot of kids don't have these days, which I'm really proud of that we do. Yeah. Which is that we will take that risk.
Yes, I totally agree. We can derive from the group.
Yes, we can. Yes. And whether, we have a few business ideas right now that are so out there. Yes. I mean, we just introduced them to a group of our friends the other day. Laughter. Every single person laughed at our idea. And we're willing to lose all of our startup capital when we're 20.
Yes.
And try this idea.
Not very much money in the grand scheme of things.
Well, yes.
Like there's no reason to be holding on to $1,000, $1K here and there.
No reason.
It's not just sitting there. It's depreciating. It's like, okay, let's throw it into a milkshake business, bro.
It's also so easy for guys our age and girls our age to spend that $1,000 very intermittently on things like going out, food, all this other stuff that basically does not actually get you ahead in any way. So might as well save it up, just put it on the milkshake business. Yep. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. It's not a fully fledged idea, but we do have a milkshake idea that we're going. And see, this is what I'm talking about, a milkshake idea. I mean, we're 20. Nobody's doing this. And that's the thing, something that does set us apart is that we're willing to take that risk. and we're willing to take that risk together. I think we always have been able to take that risk, right? And I think that's what's going to keep taking us, setting us apart, I should say.
That's right.
From the pack, right? What would you say?
I think that's 100% the thing. And honestly, at this point, originally I was a little bit offended by people's disbelief in us, maybe. But now it's almost fuel in a way. Yeah. I mean, I believe in our vision. Now I think we've walked back a little bit of a few of our extreme takes, like no internships, for example. Yeah,
exactly.
We've walked back some of those, right? And there's always people are going to walk back everything.
Also, that's so fine. I mean, we're trying to figure stuff out too.
True.
We don't know anything.
We don't know
like
everything.
I said. Yeah.
But I just think we're okay with taking a different path, and a path that may be more attuned to our hobbies and passions and goals in life. And we don't need to stay stuck in the world that everybody else is in.
Exactly. And let me tell you, I think that is something that's going to be a really big strength of ours, is going into different places. We've done real estate, we've done e-commerce, we've done sports marketing, we've done burgers, right? We're going to do food coming up in the future, apparel,
every market. We're also learning about these industries.
Exactly.
We're learning about real estate. We've learned a bunch about real estate.
That's right. That's right.
We learn not only what we don't and don't like, we're actually learning about these industries. We could have a conversation with a real estate professional one day if he says, "Hey guys, I'm looking to go in this deal." Okay, great. And what's the cap rate on that deal?
Right.
Something like that.
That's exactly right. And to me, it's actually really important, because you never want to get stuck on something. And I think that's where we talked about people that get stuck in their tax bracket. I think they also get stuck on the idea of what their career is.
Yes.
I think the masters at what they do, right? I'm reading this book, Mastery, so it's all in my head.
Sure.
I think the masters that are great at things, think about the greatest surgeons, greatest lawyers, greatest athletes, right? People that dedicate their life to a certain goal. They actually end up blending different things together. That's actually why I'm really excited to go to the military, is because I can take that 4 years of experience. It might be completely outside of my wheelhouse and completely outside of my business realm of things, but I can add on that defense industry experience into some other project that I'm having, and then to combine those two to make a
better person overall,
just
more
a combination
complete person,
and just come up with a combination that's never existed in this world.
Exactly.
Before, right? And
exactly, in many capacities.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's something that we are going to continue to do. I want this episode to be our anchor, right? I don't want us to deviate from these strengths that we have. I want us to keep taking risks, calculated though.
Very
right?
calculated.
I think
much more calculated.
Between us, it's not always calculated risk. So we got to get better at that, but keep taking risks, keep advancing our different hobbies, interests, right? When we're 20, I mean, listen, let me tell you, and you and the audience as well, you can sleep when you're 40. Right? You could relax when you're 40 or 50.
Yes.
Just don't relax right now. Just keep doing as much as you can.
As much as possible.
Keep working as much as you can. Don't relax at this point in your life if you're somebody that's our age watching this. I think that's something that I have to keep reminding myself a lot often.
Agreed. Well, thanks very much for tuning into an episode of Our Findings Show.
That's right.
Again, I'm Harrison Bell.
My name is Mir+harry.
Signing off. Thanks for stopping by.
Peace.